Well, hello, how is everybody doing? Welcome. It is September 6th, 2023. This is the RambleCast, and you may know me. I'm Cody Toombs. Corbin is not with us today. He is purportedly out watching, I believe, a movie. And aside from that, no special guest because, well, I never think to reach out for special guests. Also, Corbin didn't tell me about the movie plan until late last night, so not a lot of time to turn that one on. Not a lot of time to turn that one around. Anyway, so how's everybody doing? Hello, Diablo. Hello, Austin. Good to have you guys here. So, well, as I look at the clock, I realize I'm also starting a lot later than I planned on. Largely because I've been looking for topics, and there aren't many. It's funny, there's been a lot of news this week. Not a lot of stuff really interesting or worthy of discussion. And I don't think I'm missing a lot. I could be. I looked through multiple pages of The Verge, could not find much that jumped out at me. Though it also occurs to me as I was skimming through The Verge, something that I know happened today wasn't in their tech list, which feels weird. Anyway, we'll get to that one. Well, I don't know. Actually, I guess we can hit that one really quick. As I change views to the right one. Oh, goody. And it looks like is the Streamlabs widget just not working? I think it's not. These guys, they're so bad at this. Anyway, so today there was an announcement for the GoPro Hero 12 Black. I think by now everybody here knows exactly what that is. It's an action camera. And as it turns out, they invited me to check out the briefing. I did watch it, and I do in fact have the 12 Black here. I have not even pulled stickers off of it yet. It arrived pretty recently. All I've done so far is taken it out of the box and charge it. So I need to get around to setting it up. But they've done some interesting things with it. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it, but spec-wise, it's basically identical almost entirely to the DJI Osmo Action 5. One neat thing that GoPro did is they've added a 1/4-20 mount on the bottom, but they didn't get rid of the action camera bits. The action camera mount actually, there we go. It actually folds out, so they have little metal flaps that pop out when you actually want to mount this using the usual GoPro style mount. Other than that, not a lot to say about it yet. It is an action camera. Shocking, I know. That is also a loud zipper. Anyway, let's see. So, what else is there They increased the battery life, though funny enough, it is way, way shorter than the battery life of the Osmo Action 5. So DJI, I guess, leapfrogged them somewhere with battery life, and it's just way, way different. And GoPro added Bluetooth support. Engadget is focusing on AirPods, and I kind of get that because I watched the pre-brief video, and they very much highlighted AirPods in that, and then went on to say all Bluetooth stuff. So if you can send Bluetooth audio, you can pair it to a GoPro. But, AirPods are better for SEO. So, shocker, that's what they focused on. Anyway, yeah, that's about it. I don't know yet for sure whether or not I'll be actually reviewing the GoPro, at least on AP. But I will, at one point, there will be a review somewhere about it. So yeah, that's kind of about covers that story. Anyway, the other stuff that's happened this week has been pretty uneventful, but we are going to focus on, well, do I want to hit, which of these do I want to maybe hit early? Wii Pro's all right. Yep. So let's see, before I get into the big thing, I want to take a quick opportunity to sort of spike the ball on Spotify. So it came out, this is what, 2 days ago? Yeah, 2 days ago. It came out that Spotify is apparently planning to limit ad payouts for so-called white noise podcasters. This has been one of those stories that's just been ongoing for years. All the streaming networks or music streaming services, they have all had this problem where their most played stuff is white noise. Various kinds of white noise, whether it's rain sounds or actual just like static, radio static noise or wind or anything like that. Various kinds of white noise have been some of the most heavily played things because people get on there, put something on repeat, and it literally just plays the same track over and over and over again for like hours. And people put it on, they sleep to this, and that's it. You didn't make anything, you don't get paid. You don't get paid mentality. Nice. Sorry, I had to zoom in to this window. It's, yeah, you guys, one of these days I need to do something about the chat window so I can actually see it at a distance. Anyway, so the thing that jumped out at me about this, besides the fact it's technically kind of shady that they're going to choose to underpay anyone, and don't get me wrong, part of that makes sense. Obviously, there are tons of people doing this because they know they're making good money, and they're kind of outclassing the music producers. The thing that surprised me about this is that Spotify chose to do something shady by just declaring we're just going to start underpaying you. Like, we can do that, so we're going to do that. And it's sort of a bad form. Now, here's what really surprises me more than that. This is the same company that said, you know what? We're just going to buy a bunch of podcasts. We're going to try to buy up all the most popular podcasts and make them exclusive to our platform. Same company that did that looks at this situation and says, sure, we're just going to underpay them. Why? It's Spotify. Why didn't they just pay an intern to go make their own tracks? They could have replaced, not removed, just replaced all of the existing podcasters. Give like featured attention to Spotify Music's, or sorry, not Spotify Music, but like Spotify's white noise or something like that. They could have made their own channel of just pure white noise production, and then they wouldn't have to pay anybody. I mean, they would have paid like some intern to go out and record some stuff, or they could have bought up like various white noise tracks from around the internet. Just buy them, put them on the platform. They'd never have to pay anybody again. They could have easily overtaken the white noise industry doing this super, super easy. And they wouldn't be paying out ad payments to any of those others. They could have paid themselves. I mean, this is what Amazon does with tons and tons of products. Why wouldn't Spotify do the smarter thing here? So yeah, I'm just saying, the company that wants to own podcasts is not the company that wants to own white noise. How can this be? Also, this is one of those moments where I feel like being like, okay, so I've told this story in the past about one time I was at Google I/O. I was in a very long line, and I'm telling the extremely abridged version of this story, but I was in a very long line that involved standing in direct sunlight for a very long time. And this again is at Google I/O. Presumably I'm surrounded by a lot of the smartest people in the industry, one would think. And no one had the bright idea to just not stand in the sun. Like, there's a section of line that was in shade, and I'm the one guy who's like, let's just stand here. Let's not move forward until the line is back in the shade. And I feel like that was one of those, like, it's like it's small brain, big brain kind of thing. Like, it's a really easy, obvious thing. If you took normal, regular, average people and observed them, I think half of those people would have come up with that idea. But you take a bunch of really smart people and they somehow don't think about something as obvious as this. This is one of those moments. I'm looking at Spotify thinking, why are you going to get the bad media attention and fight possibly possibly even regulatory involvement someday by choosing to pay out less money to some people because you don't like what they're making. Instead, you could literally just do the other thing that no one would even notice. Don't put your name on it. You could literally just create another channel just like any of the other white noise producers, but conveniently give it a little bit of extra positioning. Make it easier to find. It's something that they could have easily done. It would have cost them less. It actually would make them more money. And I mean, it just seems so obvious. I don't know how a company with presumably lots of smart people. By the way, I don't have the highest opinion of Spotify, so I have to throw a big banner on the presumably smart people here. I don't know how they didn't come up with this. So, yeah, that's my take on Spotify's blunder of the week. We'll see what they do next week to screw up more. Anyway, speaking of companies doing things that are anti-competitive, let's talk about the EU's new move. Or new groove, I guess you could say. So they have decided to create, and actually this isn't new, but it's new enough. They've created the Digital Markets Act, which basically has a dedicated commission that is deciding who the internet's gatekeepers are. And gatekeeper in this instance is defined a little more precisely than I would have expected them to. But basically it comes down to this. Are you a service that is now entrenched in the internet and new competitors cannot realistically come up against you, and you, due to your exclusive nature, there's basically no way for anyone to realistically replace you. Now, in the US, of course, we would be talking about this as a monopoly. We would say it's unfair business practices. There would be probably an FTC lawsuit, and it would spend a bunch of time in the courts, blah, blah, blah. The European Union has come up with a pretty clever way around this because, frankly, they're not very good at doing that kind of a thing. So their clever solution, and I give them credit, I think this actually is really smart. They decided to just simply create judge, jury, and executioner in the form of the DMA. The same group that makes the rules is also responsible for enforcing them, and they, at various opportunities, will pick new people to put on the list. They can expand the list of different kinds of things that they're observing, and they basically just give a short 6-month deadline for offending companies to try to correct or remedy any situations that they may be unfairly benefiting from, is kind of the notion here. Diablo. Google just does search better. Bing is arse. You're not wrong. Hope Apple execs say that. Yeah. We'll see how things go with Apple. I notice they're not exactly immune to observation here. So this commission has already released its first version of this implementation, or of its list of gatekeepers. They've got 6 companies on it, including Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, ByteDance, Meta, and Microsoft, each one for various purposes or reasons. We'll go to the high-res image here. So let's see, can I do... Well, that helps a little. I'm slightly blocking Microsoft with my head. Anyway. Oh, actually, wait, what am I thinking? I can... If it'll take... Come on. There we go. That's better. Okay. So, some of the things on this list, I think very, very obviously deserve to be on the list. Some of them I question. And I think some of them probably... Some things belong on the list, but I totally understand why they're not. Okay, so starting off with the social network list, I suppose. I think it's kind of interesting that it worked out the way that it did, but on the social network list, we've got TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I would argue TikTok, I kind of don't know if it belongs on the list for social network, or if it should probably join YouTube over on the list for video sharing. In the same breath, I would even question, should YouTube be on video sharing or should it be on social network? But I think generally the world over would agree it's video sharing. But, I mean, YouTube is still also a social network. People seem to forget that just because it doesn't take the same shape. That said, I also think it's interesting LinkedIn is on this list. It's not that it shouldn't be, but it is. And I kind of can't explain it because as a job hunting site, LinkedIn is powerful, but it's terrible. I mean, it's genuinely one of the worst job hunting sites there is. And why it would be considered a gatekeeper in that sense, I mean, it's not. There are better job hunting sites, and a lot of people know it. On the other hand, there is a tendency for people to just always consider LinkedIn as part of their job hunting thing. Like, that's where you put a resume. That's where you highlight stuff. And as a social network, it exists. It's just very bad at it. And anyone who's used LinkedIn, I'm assuming most of the people who listen to this stream probably do, It's a terrible social network. It's kind of a terrible company. Their whole thing is literally pretend to be a good resume and job hunting site while signing you up for really bizarre lists, like newsletters almost. It signs you up for groups, and then you just start getting notifications from groups you never joined. They love to send you a lot of spam. They're kind of a terrible company, sort of like the other company that's on that list. But yeah, so Facebook and Instagram also on there. I don't think anyone questions why they're on the list. They belong on the list so much, it's comical. The list almost should exist just for those two. And I think it's funny too, because a year ago, no one would have questioned it. They would have just put Twitter on this list too. Now, it's funny that the EU basically just said, yeah, we don't think Twitter's important. We're just going to not count them anymore. Which really, like, this should have Elon Musk both breathing a sigh of relief and also steaming mad. Because this is sort of like, I mean, I don't want to draw the political comparison, but it's sort of like how... Sorry, I have no choice. It's such an obvious one to draw. It's sort of like how all the Republicans who were in the last debate decided to not even mention DeSantis if they could avoid it. Like, they did everything they could to avoid even responding to him. They didn't bring him up. And it's all because everyone says the guy's on his way down. He's not worth talking about. He's unimportant. Just ignore him and he'll go away. It's kind of where Twitter's at. The more we ignore it, the more it just vanishes. And the more Elon Musk is basically just vanishing from relevance. Austin, Apple's getting off easy so far. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that. And I agree, they are getting off easy, but I don't think it's for the reasons that we necessarily want to think. Also, I don't think they're getting off that easy, because they are on this list twice. 3 times. They're on this list 3 times. Just to hit that spot immediately. Then there's the internet communication services. This is basically messengers. Right now on that list is WhatsApp and Messenger. When they're saying Messenger, they're talking Facebook Messenger. So the thing to remember is this is the EU. I know a lot of people are saying, well, why isn't iMessage on here? It's because this is the EU. The EU is not trying to police the world. They are trying to police the EU. And in a moment, I'm going to make a very specific complaint about that too. But, well, several moments later, I'm going to make a specific complaint, one I've made before. But the thing is, if you look at iMessage usage, it's the US. Do people use it outside the US? Absolutely. Is it heavily used outside the US? No. Yes, iMessage hits their number requirements for regulation, but not really. It doesn't, it definitely gets used within EU's member countries, but it doesn't get used extensively. It is not a total dominant thing. And the fact of the matter is, WhatsApp is still massively more dominant. And the thing is, most of what the EU gets iMessage usage for is services that still have to hit, like your SMS. So it is still going through iMessage. Every iPhone user is getting usage, but they're not using it heavily. They all still go to WhatsApp, Messenger, or a number of other services when they're communicating. You can you can kind of tell that because every time there's an iMessage related story in any tech blog, there's always a crapload of people, so many people who come in to say, wow, you Americans are so dumb. Nobody here uses iMessage. We all use WhatsApp. Every single post is like that. Maybe the posts aren't like that now, but the comment section, certainly it's not hard to find examples. Austin, I agree they are picking and choosing. Like I said, they are judge, jury, and executioner. They are definitely not hitting Apple as hard as they could. But the thing is, I think they see this as... And I'm going to put this the way I actually think this is. I think the EU does not want to pick a fight with Apple over something that Apple can literally walk into any EU courtroom and say, here's what our actual usage numbers are. You guys aren't using this. Like, the only iMessage usage you're getting is some company sends you the SMS authentication, or sorry, like one-time codes and stuff like that. And so you open iMessage to deal with that. That's it. That's what you people are all using it for. Why are you regulating us? And every courtroom's going to go, oh yeah, no. You guys are unimportant. You don't get to be regulated on this one. So they're leaving it to the US to deal with this. And someday, maybe it won't happen, but we can pretend somehow the US might do something about this. It is the US's job to regulate this one. And that's the honest truth. It's on the US to regulate iMessage, because that's where iMessage gets all of its real usage. Awesome. Apple actually admitted that iMessage would technically qualify based on EU numbers. Yes. Now, I'm going to say this. You're going to laugh at this. Yes, of course they did. For the same reason that I said Elon Musk is probably steaming that Twitter isn't on the social network list. Because this group literally just said, you're not important enough for us to regulate. Apple does not want to be seen as unimportant in this case. This is actually a case where they need to say that in order to be taken seriously in those member countries. The irony is that if they can upgrade their status, it might actually bring more people to using iMessage. And that's distant theory. Who knows what Apple's actual motivations may be, but I tend to think that they realize that they're not important iMessage wise. They're not important in the EU. So it is what it is. Let's see, the list for video sharing, like I said, YouTube is on it. I think TikTok should be too. That's it. I don't dispute for a second that YouTube belongs on this list. As an aside though, and I think this is now a good time to bring it up, there are different remedies and requirements for each of these categories. But I've tried looking, I actually read through their whole question and answer section, and it's funny how much it really does not discuss what the remedies are. It only kind of acknowledges that there are, that certain things will differ from one to the next. And I'm not going to go reading through the whole act in hopes of figuring out exactly what the remedies for each category are. Nevertheless, yeah, I'm curious what they're going to change, or what the requirements are going to be for YouTube to not be considered a gatekeeper in video sharing. Because it's not as if they can host videos from other services. I don't see that being an option. And so I'm curious, like, what kind of interoperability are they going to offer, or what kinds of things can they do to sort of appease this group. So we'll see. which to be fair, social networks, it's actually a lot more obvious how they'll be able to appease these groups, because a lot of the regulations actually make sense for how they can work. It's harder to pin that down for video sharing. And of course, as we've all talked about for ages, the communication services, the messengers, the obvious answer to that one is they just need to be able to talk to each other. So if somebody hops on iMessage, they need to be able to talk to Messenger, and vice versa. That should be the obvious thing, but we'll see. And amusingly, that could also become a backdoor solution in the US for iMessage, because iMessage they may look at, like, if Messenger becomes available, or Messenger and WhatsApp, if they become cross compatible where other services can interop with them, then iMessage might take up interop with them, and in the process this could become a bridge network that minimizes iMessage's relevance. Anyway, but we'll see. That's if Apple is willing to do something like that. And right now it's on their head to do it. They're not being forced to do it. Anyway, so then we have they're calling it intermediation services. I think that's a poor choice of words. What they're really saying is services that are representative of other companies. So to be specific here, like to hit this list more precisely, Google, or rather to explain what I could get out of it for this list, Google Maps is on here. Most people think that Google Maps should be regulated basically on the principle that it has too much information and nobody else has access to that information. That's not why they're on here. It's here because a lot of business listings on Google Maps basically get a lot of advantageous positioning, and other listings are kind of kept out of those same positions. There's a lot of recommendation that goes for, hey Carson, how's it going? Good to have you around. But with Google Maps, so many of the services people how do I say this? If let's say you're driving through a city, middle of the day, there are thousands of restaurants around you that are open. Try searching for restaurants. What you will notice is a whole lot of fast food has a tendency to squeeze its way into that list. The same is true for a lot of other types of things. And this is not an accident. Everybody knows Google Maps pays for positioning. And so there's a pretty big opportunity for Google to take advantage of this. And so the EU doesn't really seem to be concerned with the fact that Google has a good mapping service. Let's be honest. If that's what this was about, Apple Maps would be on there too. They definitely, indisputably cross into the requirements. But no one's raising their hackles about Apple Maps. And they probably should. Like, let's be honest. Apple Maps has the exact same problem as Google Maps, where it is a focal point and a way that a lot of people find businesses. But right now, Google Maps is the target. We'll see if they ever wise up. Google Play, same situation, but much more obvious. It's entirely about which companies have preferential treatment for apps. It's the mere fact that a lot of access to like Google Play services and things like that pretty much hinge on you distributing through the Play Store. And there are various other aspects where Google Play does have some entrenched positioning that is just unfair access. And of course, that includes being included in all of the Android, or all of the Google partner distributions of Android. Which of course we'll be hitting that one shortly again. So Google Shopping on the list. I noticed you guys already commenting on that, and yeah, that is entirely it. Or it's entirely weird that they're making an issue out of that. But hey, Google Shopping, if you search Google, if there's any sort of product that is obviously could be listed, you're going to get listings for it. Does that make people users of Google Shopping? I don't know, but I kind of get why the EU is calling that one out. It is a little sort of snatching control of the market. So that seems fair. Amazon, same story. And there was no way Amazon didn't belong on this list. Frankly, I think Amazon probably belongs on this list for more things than this, but there it is. Apple App Store, same thing as Google Play. Literally no difference, except Apple is even more dickish about it. So we'll see what happens with that. The Meta Marketplace, that one, I agree it belongs on here, but it's just hard to believe that it actually reaches the point of relevance. Because I always see people say that they're going to list stuff on there, and I assume a lot of people do. But it's weird how much I never hear of anyone buying stuff off of there. I don't know what's up with that. Carson, why is Twitter not included? Well, you missed the part where I commented on this, but my theory is that the EU just looked at Twitter and basically said, yeah, they're dying. Which I'm sure Elon Musk is super, super unhappy about. Like, the worst thing for Elon Musk is not being on this list. Because they should be. Like, logically. A year ago, they would have been. I think the EU sees Twitter and basically says, yeah, you're dying. We don't care anymore. And to give some additional fairness to it, though, I think it does need to be said. If you ever look at Twitter's market share, like usage numbers, they were like 11th in the like running for social networks. They were way behind everybody else. So Twitter maybe outsized in terms of relevance, but or rather each user of Twitter brings more relevance than each user of a lot of other social networks. But at the same time, its usage numbers were always actually kind of paltry, which is a big part of why they couldn't really make money. But it is what it is. So yeah, I kind of have a feeling that that's why Twitter's not on here. And who knows? It could always be added in the future, but at this stage, probably not. I mean, just calling it as it is. Let's see. For the search category, it's Google search. We know this. There's literally nobody surprised. It's the most predictable thing there could be. For ads, same answer. It's Google, Amazon, and Facebook. We know this. That literally nobody would be surprised by that list, right? I mean, does anyone find that at all surprising? For browser, they mentioned Chrome and Safari. Edge was on this list, but apparently they edged off the list. Yeah, somehow Microsoft squeezed its way off that list. Not sure that's entirely appropriate, but who cares? Oh yeah, by the way, Microsoft also managed to get Bing excluded from the search category. Anybody? Oh, and I think they were also on the ads category. Microsoft managed to lobby their way out of a lot of this list, which is surprising, but also kind of not. I mean, who here really thinks that Bing was relevant in terms of search? They are relevant in terms of ads, but I don't think anybody seriously cares about Bing's position in search right now. But we get to the browser with Chrome and Safari. I'm curious if the reason Safari is on the list is because it's on iOS and you don't have the option to not use it on iOS. That's the only explanation I've really got for this, because Safari is obviously not that relevant outside of iOS and Mac, because you can't run it anywhere outside of iOS and Mac. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know anybody who still uses Safari on Mac. It's not bad. It's a decent browser, but just nobody uses it. It's not great. Austin, you would have added ChatGPT to search. I was thinking about this. I couldn't really place how or where I would put it, but yeah, I guess search is probably it's the only category that makes decent sense. The thing that I think they're struggling with is, one, we don't really know if ChatGPT is still going to even be relevant in a year. Plus, if I remember correctly, it officially does not qualify to be on the list because, what were their qualifications? Is this it? Okay, so there are 3 cumulative criteria that presumptively lead to a designation as a gatekeeper. 1, a size that impacts the internal market. This is presumed to be the case if the company achieves an annual turnover in European Economic Area equal to or above 7.5 billion euro. That, I think, is where ChatGPT falls short already. And that's for 3 financial years in a row. ChatGPT didn't even exist in any meaningful form 3 years ago. So this right here disqualifies ChatGPT from being on the list. So yeah, that's why. And that's why a lot of like lightning fast success stories are probably not going to get regulated by this group. To be fair, this group can change its rules anytime it wants. So we'll see if they come up with something new. The other big thing is, and I think that this is fair. I hate saying this because it's so obviously rife for abuse, but when it comes down to it, the practical realities of it are, if you take something that is so brand new that the market is still trying to figure out what to do with it, and I think we can confidently say generative AI is very much in that list. It's hard to justify regulating it, and even if you do justify regulating it, the way that this group is doing, where they're actually setting custom rules for each of the categories, what rules do you set? Like, how do you define a way for generative AI services to not be unfair market competitors that are entrenched in their own way? It's not even clear what business practice ChatGPT is using to do that. So until that sort of gets worked out, I don't think we're really going to see an answer on that one. Though with that said, ChatGPT's got about a year of significant activity and raising money. I give it 2 years, and we're going to probably see ChatGPT on this list, for one reason or another. Let's see. But yeah, the other big thing is the control of an important gateway for business users towards financial consumers. This is presumed to be the case if the company operates a core platform service with more than 45 million monthly active end users established or located in the EU, and more than 10,000 yearly active business users established in the EU in the last financial year. Yeah, I don't know that. Well, yeah, ChatGPT probably has that. That's not asking too much. By the way, for reference, it has to have 45 million monthly active end users established or located in the EU, and more than 10,000 business users. Uh, just to note, and I'm going to bring this up more later, the population of the EU, of all the EU member countries, is 448 million people. I I will bring this up for other reasons later, but that basically means if you look back at this stat, 45 million monthly active users, that means 10%. They basically 10% of the EU must use a service for it to be included in this list. Well, service or product, which, yeah. Um, uh, Austin, you don't know how the EU is setting this up at all? I mean, they're definitely getting creative with their numbers, that's for sure. Um, so anyway, let's see. The browser list, just going back to that, I think Chrome probably belonged on this. Chrome was probably one of the obvious things on this list. I'm sure that as they were looking at different things, they probably said, okay, we have to put Amazon on because they're horrible. We have to put Facebook, Meta at large on here because same story. TikTok probably needs to be on here. YouTube probably needs to be on here. Google at large needs to be on here. I'm sure they looked at Apple and said, well, common sense, we have to put Apple on here. What do we get them for? And, they eventually realized that App Store and iOS distribution basically needed to be on that list. And let's see. I'm sure they wanted to, they've had a beef against Microsoft for ages. And so they had to hit the only other thing, or the only two things they could hit Microsoft for. One being LinkedIn, which still feels like a stretch. The other one being, of course, Windows. Which brings us to our last category, which is operating system. What are the three biggest OSs? Android, iOS, Windows. They clearly had to regulate all three. How they're going to go about regulating these, I'm curious. I do want to look over the list of rules for what they have to do in order to stay on the good side of this commission going forward for Android, iOS, and Windows. Android is an interesting one because they're clearly not concerned with Android as an operating system. They're concerned with, they even say it, Google Android. They're concerned specifically with Google partner companies, which is predominantly just, a handful of companies that make phones. So that's going to be an interesting one. Especially since it's the only open source option. We shall see what goes from there. Curvy. Okay, so you missed the part where I talked about this already. The quick summary, though, you probably should just go back and listen to it. But the quick summary is this is the EU policing what happens in the EU. We all know that iMessage is dominant in the US as a reason that people stick on Apple devices. It's not so much dominant in the EU. They are much, much more prone to use WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. So, yes, as Austin pointed out, Apple technically qualifies if you read the rules as they are specifically and strictly defined. But once you use kind of that basic common sense of how are people using iMessage over there, it is mostly people who are just receiving one-time codes, or dealing with a company that has to send via SMS as opposed to WhatsApp or Messenger for whatever reason. But once you get out of that, people are not using iMessage heavily. So, yeah, honestly, like, even I get why iMessage isn't on there. It probably should be. It deserves to be. But if you're just looking at this from the position of the EU, I don't think they care. And yes, iMessage is technically under review. And strictly speaking, if Apple ever does anything hinky with iMessage stats, because they obviously have all those stats running through their servers, they know exactly what messages their iPhones are receiving. I think it's safe to say that something should be done about it. But does something need to be done about it? In terms of the EU's viewpoint, I don't think so. So yeah, they will review it. They may come back and decide to do something about it. But I really think that my hunch is what they want is to see the US do this same thing. Yeah, that's fair. iMessage has picked up some popularity in the UK, but being that they're not a member country of the EU anymore, yeah, that kind of defeats that argument. Nevertheless, I think that what the EU is actually trying to do here is basically give the US a template for what to do, and every single person out there is basically saying, please, let's do something about iMessage. But if there's anywhere that needs to do something about it, it's here in the US. We don't need, like, the EU does not really need to be moderating that. The US does. So we'll see what happens. There has been talk about the regulatory hammer possibly coming down. There is supposedly going to be an investigation, or may already be an investigation, but whatever happens, it needs to be us. That's just the honest truth of it. It needs to be us. And bear in mind, all the regulations, this is a really important distinction. All the regulations here only dictate that these companies have to change their products to be good little boys and girls in the EU. Strictly speaking, they don't have to do worldwide, like, acquiescence. They can offer different experiences and different integrations, different offers in any place that they want, as long as they meet the rules in the EU for the EU. Once you go outside of the EU, none of those rules apply. Austin, you trust the US less than the EU? Well, no kidding. We're broken. We're terrible at this stuff. So yeah, I'm believe me, I'm with you. I don't think we're really ever going to get around to regulating Apple's use of iMessage. Other things, maybe. One of these days we might actually do something about the App Store, but I don't think we're ever going to do anything about iMessage. Because frankly, too many politicians are unconvinced that it matters. I think they just see it as an advantage that Apple is going to have, but it's not going to dictate the winner. And I think that a lot of them don't understand the relevance of it. And to be fair, like, over the years, that's kind of been the thing. Look at how many times the sort of de facto messaging platforms have changed. This isn't a new thing. iMessage will, just logically, iMessage will probably vanish at some point. Or rather, become unimportant enough. That's what history has shown us so far. Think of all the different messaging platforms that used to be so dominant that it was just assumed everybody used them. And almost all of those are gone. They're dead. they've disappeared, kind of the same way that MySpace used to be the dominant thing that everyone used, and before that it was Friendster, though to be fair, not enough people use that. And Facebook came along and basically made MySpace irrelevant. And today I would argue that given the massive losses Facebook has taken, Facebook is kind of on the way out too. Instagram's, that's why Facebook bought it. But Instagram has taken on a lot of what used to be Facebook's core audience. And from all appearances, Instagram was kind of on its way out too. Or maybe in the near future. Threads was obviously an attempt to rekindle that. And it did for 2 to 3 weeks. And now it hasn't. I'm really curious what usage Threads gets now. I'd love to see that graph. But we shall see. Which, by the way, that's one of the reasons why Threads is not on this list. It's not in the EU. They do not have access to it. Therefore, it's not on the list of social networks, even though it wouldn't have had wait, no. Yeah, actually, if they had opened it up, it would have been eligible for this, even just being a few months old. It would have been eligible because the parent company hits all the requirements. So yeah, we'll see what happens with some of these. But the US should be the one who polices a lot of things in the US, and we don't do that very well. Which is why I kind of had to give credit to the EU for coming up with this commission, because as much as I think that they are playing politics, they are definitely, to some extent, letting companies abuse their positions. And there's probably some amount of corruption and bribery going on. Again, why isn't Microsoft on more of this list? Also, I'm just going to throw this out here. If we're going to talk about gatekeepers, you want to know another category that belongs? Gaming. Why is gaming not on here? Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony. Why are they not on this list? Oh, while we're at it, Apple. Apple kind of has dominated gaming through iOS. How about putting them on this list? Anyone think that maybe at least the major game console companies, maybe they belong? I'm just saying, like, it's kind of hard not to see that one as a given. So let's see. Oh, okay. Sorry. Just got a very unexpected email. Not a big deal. Just a follow-up thing from GoPro. Let's see. Telecom companies. Oh, wait. The EU's. Yeah, I mean, the EU probably should be knocking on the telecom companies. But I think different like they already have other regulations that cover this in their FAQ. Yeah, they had a section, are the DSA and DMA overlapping? So the DSA, do we have like a first definition of that? Yeah, I didn't think so. What did the DSA stand for? Damn it. Autocomplete. Okay, the Digital Services Act. Okay, so Digital Services Act and Digital Markets Act aim to create a safer digital space where the fundamental rights of users are protected to establish a level playing field for businesses. So what are digital services? Digital services include a large category of online services from simple websites to internet infrastructure services and online platforms. Yeah. So the DSA, which is a different thing, that's who is there to deal with their telecom companies. And it can, obviously there can be overlap, but yeah, this is there to prevent telecom companies from having unfair business practices. So, or at least that's part of it. And the EU does have other regulatory bodies that already exist for dealing with their telecom companies. So that should probably be solved. Carson, you mentioned Netflix. At this stage, can Netflix really be on the list? I mean, I'm assuming they probably meet the financial requirements. Though maybe they don't. I don't know. But there has to also be a presumption that they are keeping other companies from getting into the industry. And at this stage, I mean, we've seen Disney hopping in. We've seen streaming services popping up all over the place. I don't know that Netflix is keeping anybody out. Now, if Netflix was doing any of the things that people have hypothesized, like prioritized internet or paying for bandwidth on behalf of users so that they can stream content where other companies wouldn't be able to afford or handle that kind of thing. Like if we saw that stuff, then yeah, Netflix would probably be on the list. But I don't think that I don't think they have enough of an anti-competitive position where Netflix could really be included. They're not entrenched in that same way that Google search is. Especially just there are too many competitors, some of which are doing just as well, if not better than Netflix. Austin. Yeah, the whole thing with telecom companies injecting their own ads. Honestly, I don't know when or if it's going to happen. And obviously this is going to be on a case-by-case basis, but I'm just waiting. I think the companies that are doing this, eventually there will be class action lawsuits by web companies, because you got to figure, like, one of these days, and honestly, I almost wonder if it'll be like, maybe it won't be Facebook, but it'll be somebody. I'm just waiting. One of these days, one of these companies is going to say, you know what? You're replacing our ads with your own. You are messing with our content. You've done material damage to our business. We're not taking it anymore. And I expect the lawsuit against telecom companies that are doing this to be prolific. It bordering on violent. Because it's an easy thing to catch them doing. It is technically illegal. And it is also objectively dangerous. So I wouldn't be surprised if that eventually happens. And I hope it does. Because the last thing we need is telecom companies that feel like they have the authority to play with whatever it is that you are receiving. And look, I come from this with my own personal experience of watching a telecom company actually break a protocol because their system for injecting ads was misbehaving. It actually, as a result, caused an NVIDIA Shield to boot loop. That was a very real thing. And to this day, I'm just baffled that they were dumb enough to do it as badly as they did. So anyway, yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that we're going to see this list probably change quite a bit over the years. I do worry a little bit that there is some sort of favoritism playing in on this list, uh, or some how do I want to describe this? Maybe like reverse favoritism. That because the EU sort of famously hates Google. We know this. They've been looking for ways to screw with Google for years. And look at this list. Just as a reminder, Dark Blue is a product from Google. All but 2 of these categories have something from Google. All but 2. If Google still had a social network, it would be on this list in a heartbeat. And if Google could get its messaging situation at all worked out, it'd be on that list too. Just by virtue of existing. It's only because Google bungled both of those things that it's not on those lists. Apple should be on for iMessage. It's not. Microsoft, I think common sense belongs on this list without even a question. Microsoft belongs on this list. But all they're getting hit for is Windows, which, well, not too shocking. And they're on here for LinkedIn, which I think most people would just look at and say, okay, whatever. Great. Thanks. Weird choice. And again, like I said, why are game consoles not on here? Because I would argue that if you're going to nitpick on something like social networks and video sharing, you should probably also hit game consoles. It's an obvious choice. Regardless, let's see. There were a few other angles on this. So the goal here is, of course, to prevent anti-competitive behavior. Let's see. Samsung was originally on this list because of its internet browser, which I'm so curious how and why was its internet browser actually getting that much usage? Because again, I've heard so little about people really using its browser. I kind of assumed that it wasn't getting used, and it only, to my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's only an Android browser, right? Like they don't have a web browser for use on a desktop computer, so pretty sure that's just for Android. And is that really that big of a deal? Is it that dominant? I don't know. So yeah, I do wonder about that one. Let's see. Scrolling further down. Oh, do we have the... I think it was in here. The responses by companies were interesting because... skimming down, making sure I'm not forgetting something. Okay, so Google has kind of responded to this, saying that they're going to follow the rules, but they basically still want to try to discuss better ways of doing some of this. Let's see. Amazon apparently is bending to the will on this. They're not really fighting this, though. I have a funny feeling Amazon's going to do it in the way Amazon likes to do these things, which is basically they say they're going to follow the rules and then they just find new ways to break the rules and just not be spotted for it for a few months or years. Because, dear God, can anybody think of a company that has been more hostile to its own sellers than Amazon? There is an answer to this. It's Temu, but outside of Temu, like, Amazon is horrendous to its sellers. So, yeah, it's time for something to be done. Let's see. But I did find this hilarious. ByteDance's response. This is absolutely phenomenal for a response. So they've been more critical of the gatekeeper decision. TikTok's Brussels public policy head Carolyn Greer noted that the company fundamentally disagrees with the decision. Quote, TikTok has brought choice to a space largely controlled by incumbents, and this decision risks undermining the DMA's stated goal by protecting actual gatekeepers from newer companies like TikTok. We're extremely disappointed that no market investigation was conducted prior to this decision and are evaluating our next steps. Which, seeing as how this commission supposedly specifically did market investigation, well, basically TikTok is calling them a liar. And that's probably true. I mean, let's be honest. The amount of market investigation they're doing is probably not as thorough as it could be. That being said, if you're going against judge, jury, and executioner, maybe you shouldn't be just straight up saying you guys are liars and we don't respect you. That's probably not your best move. Diablo, my investigation is I heard from other companies. That could be true, but let's be honest. The EU's commission is probably about as tech savvy as American politicians, which is to say they probably heard it from their kids, or actually their grandkids. There's fair odds that that's how they did their market investigation. Asking, hey, little Timmy, oh my God, I just heard. Come on. 2 different devices woke up to me saying, hey, Timmy. Oh, jeez. Wow, that's ridiculous. Okay, so anyway, they could be, or they're probably just asking their grandkids, like, what companies do you think are unfair? Are not treating their competitors safe or fairly. And yeah, that's how you ended up with half of these on the list. That or asking who's making enough money that we can find the living crap out of them. Because let's be honest, that's what this is about. Which brings me to the next paragraph in The Verge's coverage, and something I specifically want to complain about. And I've complained about this before, so sorry if this is a bit of a repeat. But, to quote, if designated gatekeepers don't comply with the DMA's rules, the commission can impose fines of up to 10% of the company's total worldwide turnover, or as much as 20% for repeat offenders. They can even impose structural remedies, like forcing a gatekeeper to sell parts of its business. Here's my issue with this. And again, I've complained about this before. But specifically, they can impose fines of up to 10% of a company's total worldwide turnover. So the EU is saying, hey, doesn't matter how much of their money came from us, we're going to take 10% of all of their money. Just want to call attention to this. Remember we talked about the population before, because 10% of the EU's population basically needs to use the service before it can be on this list. Their population is 448 million people across all their member states, which is 27 countries, may I remind you. So 448 million people, that's a lot of people. It really is. Considering the population of the planet, are we at 8 billion yet? I actually don't remember this. Worldwide population. Okay, we're almost there. We're approaching. According to Big G, we're at 7.8 billion people, almost 7.9. Let's be honest, it's only a few years away, and we should be hitting that. Actually, that's as of 2020. Oh, okay. We're over 8 billion. Never mind. Actually, pretty recently, too. This is an amusing clock, by the way, as it's counting by 1 and sometimes goes up and goes down. Interesting. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, at a at we have a lot of people, but the EU is like, you know what? Just because, um, let's see, okay, so if you had, let's say, well, we're gonna kind of round up. We're gonna say that they basically have 20%. Wait, is that right? That's not right. Oh no, I'm doing that math wrong. Um, yeah, sorry. It's 5%. So if you had 5% of the world's population and you said we're going to take 10% of a company's total worldwide income. I mean, yes, the EU is kind of like the US in terms of the value of their customers is usually higher than the value of customers in, say, Africa. And that is a purely business statement. It's not meant in any way to discuss race or anything else. It's purely a statement of the economy in the EU is simply higher. The value of the euro is higher than the value of currencies and the amount that they could charge in, say, Africa, India, China, and a number of other countries. Whereas the EU, the US, the US, Japan, I don't know. I'm sure there are probably Korea, I would guess. But yeah, there are a few other places where the value of a customer in that particular country is higher to any given company. But the EU is not exactly the arbiter of this. They don't have dominance. So my question comes back to, why do they get to take, or why are they deciding that the entire worldwide income of a company is theirs to pick from the bones? What if everybody did this? If everyone did this, that becomes a problem. And just to demonstrate this, let's talk about the US with its 331, almost 332 million people. Oh, actually, that was in 2021. I probably should have checked these for dates. But yeah, so the US has to be like 333, 4 million territory, or maybe higher. I don't know, whatever. But we don't even, we could skip that and instead just go to North America. If we just take North America, we're at 579 million. Oh, God, that was in 2016. Okay, let's round up. Let's say 600 million. I don't care. We're just making up numbers at this point. What the hell? How did... Okay, that answer was wrong. Okay, how about this worldometer thing? That's still picking up the wrong number. It's not including at least Mexico. That's including the US only. Or no, it's... Yeah, it's not including Mexico in Northern America. All right. Well, that site's useless. Okay, let's just operate. I like this number. We're just going to operate on this and say it should be up to like 600 million. That's more than the population of all the EU member states. By a lot. 450, let's say, versus 600 million. What if we decided we're just going to take worldwide population into account too? That's still, if the two groups got together, the EU and the US, and both decided that they're going to take 10% of the entire worldwide population, and the worldwide income of a company, that collectively the two would be taking 20% of a company's entire income. Meanwhile, they would collectively only represent 1/8 of the population that could be using that company's services. I'm just saying, this is starting to feel kind of like how red states complain about how money gets spent out of the federal budget when they themselves are taking in a lot more than they put out. It's just one of those things where there's clearly a problem here, and I don't agree with how the EU decides that it warrants this. It feels greedy, and when you put that particular spin on it, all of a sudden it starts making a little... It casts kind of an ugly color on how they make their decisions about who belongs in that list. I mean, just for example, I'm going to throw out a weird one here, and I believe due to financial reasons they would not qualify, but due to usage reasons they would. But why isn't Wikipedia on this list? Can anyone explain that? I would argue Wikipedia is deeply entrenched. I would argue that Wikipedia is easily used by 10% or more of the EU population. I would argue Wikipedia has actually effectively pushed out competitors. They have been anti-competitive in their own ways. The only reason Wikipedia is not on the list is they don't have any money for the EU to take. Also, they're not a particularly evil organization. I'm not making any issue out of that. But that's the thing. Wikipedia doesn't have money. The EU is looking at places that they can tax effectively. That's what this is. So, again, when you're taking this as kind of the harsh, how are they making these decisions? Who are they penalizing? They're penalizing the companies that make a lot of money and make a lot of money on the specific things that they're targeting. Look back over this list for a second and tell me which things in here do not apply to making money. The only things that jump out at me on that list is the browser category. And that's it. All the other things on here have something to do with making money. Arguably, messengers less so, but we do know that WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger do make some money off of their services. Operating systems gets a little arguable to an extent, but not really. And again, browsers kind of iffy. But all these others are purely about making money. And they're companies that make a ton of money. Look, I'm not trying to turn this into a conspiratorial thing, but it's not hard to see the connection here. Certainly they want to do good with this, but I think they're also very, very much looking at only the places that are making enough money that they can reasonably take a big chunk of it when a company does not comply with the rules as they are defined. And just watch. Right now, the only company that is saying, basically screw this is BS, is ByteDance. But just watch. What do you want to bet in 6 months? At least 1 or 2 of these will not be compliant. I have a feeling there will be 1 to 2 of these that are not compliant. Pretty good odds Amazon will be one of them. I think it's safe to say that they will... It wouldn't matter how much Google does to be compliant. Google will not be considered compliant. I wouldn't be surprised if Facebook maybe gets nailed. In fact, actually, I'd be shocked if Facebook doesn't get nailed. So, out of the 6 companies, I'm already calling 3 of them are likely to get tapped. They're probably going to get fined, and I wouldn't be surprised if at least one of them says, well, screw you, we're just not doing it. Like, we're not paying you, and if you want to cut us off, you can try. That company, of course, being TikTok. And my going suspicion is Google will probably fight their fine in court. We'll see how well that goes, because Google's history in European courts has not gone well. So, things to consider. Let's see. So yeah, that's I think everything I had come up with to comment on with that topic. So going back, Diablo said, what would be the point a company would turn everything down and not do business there? So yeah, I mean, this is something that's been kicked around in the past. Like, various companies have basically said, if you want to like overcharge us, or if you want to create like unreasonable rules, we could just not do business in your area. Generally speaking, like when that included the UK, that was kind of that would have been a pretty big loss. Seeing as the EU and UK are now separate, it's not unreasonable that a company could say, well, we don't care about the rest of the EU. We'll just do business in the UK, US, and rest of the world. Or if the UK decides to do something and the rest of the EU doesn't, it would likewise not be that surprising for a company to say, well, we don't agree with the UK. We can ignore you. We can leave you out. But the rest of the EU seems to be okay with us, which notably this was happening with the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Just realized that's a combination of a tongue twister, and also for some reason I was momentarily uncertain if it was Activision or something else. But yeah, anyway. So it's not unreasonable for a company to actually just say, we don't have to do business with you. And at that point, who's going to beat them? By the way, this is something companies at this scale have as a string they can pull. Because what's going to happen? Let's just hypothetically, let's use, what would be a good one here? Oh, this is an obvious one. Let's use YouTube. What happens, hypothetically, if the EU decides to ban YouTube? Now, and let's pretend that this wouldn't affect the rest of the rest of Google services. Let's pretend it is YouTube only. What happens? Well, YouTube can basically say, well, we've really tried. We find that the European Union is basically not capable of coming to a reasonable decision. We appreciate their efforts to try to come up with terms, but we don't feel that it is good for a business relationship to continue operating there. So until they change their plans, we're going to pull out of the EU. We will continue serving the UK, US, the rest of the world, including other countries that are reasonable, basically. Yeah, what happens? I mean, really, think about it for a second. What happens? All of a sudden, the UK is sitting there with basically multiple companies who are going to try to be YouTube competitors. And some of them will succeed. Of course they will. To an extent. And there are already companies out there that have the infrastructure and capability of doing this. But would they be able to ramp up and actually overtake YouTube? No. And here's where that gets interesting. Because they would have no competition from YouTube within the EU, but then they have to compete with YouTube everywhere else. All YouTube has to do is ramp up its competitive nature. And all of a sudden, those companies aren't going to be able to compete. They're not going to compete well with YouTube anywhere else outside of the EU. At which point, can they be like really successful? Can they be profitable? I mean, this could be an opportunity for them to gain real market share and possibly become entrenched companies. But it's a long shot. It's an actual long shot. Maybe YouTube isn't the best example of this. There are others that would probably be better. But eventually the EU is going to decide to let YouTube back in. And that's where things get ugly. Because the moment that they decide to do that, YouTube will probably just squash anyone who did rise up in that meantime. So that's the thing about the worldwide competitive nature. If a company decides to pull out and it is as entrenched as they're accusing it of being, basically the EU, all they're doing is hurting their own people, who will also get very angry about YouTube suddenly being gone, or any of these others. Imagine if Google search was taken away. I mean, just imagine this. All of a sudden, a bunch of people have to use Bing. Really? All of a sudden, everyone switches to DuckDuckGo. Really? I mean, can we get a reality check here? These things don't happen easily. What if they decide that Microsoft is not a nice player? There goes Windows. Who in the EU is going to be jumping ship to Mac OS and Linux? Plenty of people would probably be okay switching to Mac. There would be plenty of people okay switching to Linux. But how quickly does that country crumble when Windows is gone? Like, they will have some incredible growing pains. That is not a tenable story. So they have to play nice with the companies too. They can regulate, they can issue threats, but if a company ever decides to pull out, it is end of days for that country for a while. Even if competitors come along, those competitors will only be relevant within the EU. Because for the most part, the entrenched companies kind of mostly own worldwide dominance. Not entirely. Obviously, it varies from one case to the other. Like, let's be honest, LinkedIn only really matters in the US and EU and other, similar countries, say, counting in Canada and the UK. But is LinkedIn significant outside of these? To my knowledge, no. I admit I've never looked, but I doubt it. And we can see counterexamples of this too. What if WhatsApp decided we're not going to operate in the US? Show of hands, who here even remotely cares? Nobody. Hold on a sec. Throat went suddenly very wry. That was unpleasant. Okay. Changing how I sit may help. So, all things considered, the EU peeps who don't use RCS will care. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the thing, is we're going to, if any of these companies ever decide to pull out of a country, and I mean, we have seen micro examples of this. Facebook and Google have stopped using, or stopped offering their news platforms or, news aggregators. Well, it's Google's news aggregator and it's Facebook's link previews in the feed. They've stopped offering those for any news sites in Australia and I think it was Canada. I mean, look, I've heard from people in those countries. They're not happy about it. They're pretty mad that this just happened. And these are two good examples of companies basically saying, look, you're trying to charge us too much to do something. It's not worth it to us. We're out. And is it costing the company something? Yeah. It's not costing them as much as they would have had to pay. And in turn, users are unhappy about it. Eventually, that's going to come back to bite the politicians and, in this case, the news organizations, more than it bites the companies that are pulling their product, or portions of their product in this case. So, this is a situation that does have, we've seen examples of it. And if this gatekeeper policy goes far enough, and if they actually do fine a company too much, watch as that company basically raises the middle finger and says, fine, let's see how you do without us. That's the thing. The EU, let's be honest, if the EU were to ban Alphabet, ban or screw up enough that one of the companies walks away, either one is the same outcome. What would happen if they banned Alphabet, Amazon, Apple, or Microsoft? You'll notice I left 2 of these out. That's 4 companies. If any one of those was banned, and I say this a little bit sort of doomsayer-ish, but I'm also saying it totally sincerely. If they banned any one of these, watch as the entire country practically folds for 6 months. Lots of stuff would go into sheer chaos. I mean, we're talking about Google search, Amazon for products, Apple for the iPhone, or Microsoft for Windows. If any one of these goes away, that's an entire tech stack for a large chunk of people. That's products they rely on every day for work, for personal use, for everything. That is so much stuff that goes away. If that happens, it's dramatic. It's actually a really big deal. This is almost the too big to fail argument. Yeah, obviously some companies would love it, and some companies would try to swoop in. I mean, if you ban Google search, Microsoft is going to be like, hey, guys, finally, there's someone who gets to use Bing. Isn't it exciting? Yeah, yeah. I mean, Microsoft would love it. Everyone else is going to call this total garbage. They'd hate it. It would be a doomsday situation for them. So, yeah, there are a few ways that this will work out for some people somewhere, somehow. But realistically, if those 4 companies were to disappear, it's devastation for a while. So then that brings us to ByteDance and Meta. I feel like those 2 fall into a different group. Let's be honest. If they were to ban Meta, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and Messenger, I take it back. I guess depending on the country, WhatsApp would be pretty much devastation too. Would people get over it pretty quickly? Yes. But not overnight. And all of a sudden, if that happened, it would also introduce the iMessage problem that Europe currently doesn't have. Which is kind of a fun irony. If things go south with one company, then all of a sudden they go south with another company too. The warlords will miss WhatsApp. Sad but true. So the only one in this list that I think if it were to go away, people would mostly be able to ignore it is TikTok. You take TikTok out of the equation and, I mean, yes, it would matter. People would care, but it would be replaced quickly. I mean, all the activity that is on TikTok, aside from the people who make money on TikTok, all that activity, it would basically just switch over to a combination of Instagram and YouTube. Maybe a couple of other services too. I guess a little bit of it on Facebook, and I'm sure somewhere else, but I'm totally drawing a blank on what. Maybe some people would find their way back to Snap or something. I doubt it. But yeah, It's the only one in this list that is not providing a critical service. So, but that's, again, that's the thing. I look at this and I do wonder, can the EU push too hard? Can they decide to charge too much? Can they do something that is too damaging, too much of a screw up? And if they do, like, how ugly does that get? Also, I just got, let's see. Oh, slightly different. I just got a random friend request from a garbage account on Discord. Just going by the name and it's not from the server I usually get them from, but it's still a server. It's still a large community server, so definitely some creepy jackass who does not actually belong. They're just being weird and dumb and creepy. Oh, funny, they're also impersonating... What the hell? What the double hell? They've been on the server for ages. This is actually... This almost kind of looks like a real person. Not just a bot. Still suspicious. I don't know. I almost want to know what that's about. Let's see, though. Oh, wait, that... No, that's not the same one. Who the hell? Oh, here it is. This is the one. Yeah, that's still... That's someone who's actually been on here for a long time still. That is super, super weird. Wait, no? Is that also not it? Oh, this is so confusing. Yeah, no, this is somebody else. Okay. Well, I'll deal with this later, but kind of want to know what the hell is the actual story here. Okay. And because, you know, it doesn't matter. All right. Anyway. Yeah, so I think that is my total thoughts on this right now. Let's see. Diablo, wondering if Google lawyers have been already thinking about this and got it in their pockets for the day it comes. Oh, I'm confident, yeah. I mean, I'm sure lawyers at all these companies are already working on this. Some of them are probably preparing arguments to try to basically convince the EU to take them off the list. Some of them are probably working on arguments already for the eventual time that they get fined. Because, again, I guarantee some of these companies will get fined. And it probably won't matter if there's a defense, because the EU has a tendency to, like, the moment that they decide they're going to fine somebody, it doesn't matter how many times you go to court, that fine usually carries through. I don't remember a time that it hasn't. But we shall see. Let's see. Diablo, you also mentioned VPNs. Yeah. And I've said this a few times in the past. I swear, VPNs, that's becoming very quickly the new must-have thing for everybody. And it's really too bad that VPNs are such a cringy, terrible business to generally be in, because there are a lot of people who are just the worst, or a lot of companies that are the worst. And just that's it. They're the worst. Okay. No. I guess I don't need to do that because probably like we haven't had any new topics suggested, so I'm thinking there probably won't be too much more to say. Let's see. Oh, okay. Just saw the comment in game streams. Okay, so let's see. What other topics were there? Okay, I only had one other thing in mind, and it's kind of a small, it's a super small topic, but I just found some amusement in the fact that it's there. And The Verge covered this, so I figured why not. So Angry Orange, the trial of Angry Orange is going to be televised via YouTube. So I saw this and my immediate thought was, hey, it's kind of like how Twitter was televising a bunch of dumb stuff, or tried to stream a bunch of dumb stuff to get people excited for its streaming platform, and that kind of failed. That wasn't very good. But the reason it wasn't very good and the reason it failed is because Twitter's infrastructure was garbage, and they couldn't actually handle even the paltry numbers of viewers that they got. The funny thing is, YouTube's great at this. YouTube's actually really, really good at live streaming. Is it always the best? It's debatable. And I think we can all say with, oh my God, confidence, they have to turn off the chat room. No comments, no chat room. If they stream this has to just be by itself. Let all the conversation happen somewhere else. That said, this is fantastic. This is definitely for the good of the country. That this trial needs to be on full display. It needs to be accessible to everybody. And so, yeah, 100%. This is something that should be visible. All TVs across the world would get this to show up on the front page. I mean, probably not across the world. Seeing as this is a state trial, I even kind of wonder if it's going to be as interesting outside of the state. Obviously, I mean, because of the circumstances it is, but because this is effectively a federal case, like the outcome is effectively that of a federal case, while it's still only a state case. That being said, I think all eyes are going to be on this. Maybe not the actual stream of this. I think I am sure that this is going to be so boring. No one is going to want to watch this. But I'm sure everyone is going to want to see the hot takes. Everyone is going to be following everyone's aggregation of what happens during this trial. And you got to figure there's going to be like every single news outlet is going to dedicate somebody to watching this. Or, well, anyone who covers this kind of thing. Diablo, you can't wait for those memes? I mean, do you have to? Go on Twitter now. Actually, don't. Avoid Twitter if you can. But I'm just saying, like, those memes are all over the place. People have been calling for parrying the lock him up thing for a long time. And they should. But yeah, I have a funny feeling that it's going to get really thick. Really, really thick, as people are just beating this story to a pulp. Uh, oh yeah, that thing they say when you point a finger, four pointing back at you, which has always annoyed me because it's actually wrong anyway. I mean, point a finger real quick. Just look at your hand. How many are pointing back at you? It's 3, not 4. So already, whoever came up with that saying, bad at math. They didn't even get through their first grade math class. And even if you're one of those people where like your thumb curls down or something, like it's not pointing at you, it's pointing at the ground. Whatever. Anyway, it you know, it's one of those old sayings that's just always pissed me off because it's just fundamentally wrong in a very basic way. It also has been generally kind of dumb to me because, I mean, it mostly doesn't apply. A lot of times when people point fingers, it's because they're right. They're often right with their accusations, and the accusation doesn't go the other direction. So yeah, little thing, but annoys me. So yeah, we shall see. But I do think that this is going to be funny because we're going to see YouTube making, I'm sure, immense profit off of this stream, while at the same time, Twitter is going to be sitting back basically looking at this going, wow, we couldn't even do the most basic version of this and YouTube just totally killed us. Oh, Diablo, you're describing, I mean, I've heard about the Ken Paxton thing. It's hard not to have heard about that. But I don't know anything about the Hidalgo story. I'm not sure I've even heard of her. But to be fair, Ken Paxton is probably going away. I admit I haven't been following it very recently, but I mean, everyone's turning against him, so it's not looking good for him. Which, great. It shouldn't. The guy was as corrupt as it gets, so who cares? But yeah, anyway. So yeah, I think that is about where my my topic list ends. I don't think I call he's calling all of them rhinos. Of course he is. That's the talking point now. Basically, if you don't join in the corruption, then you're a fake and you don't belong. You don't belong on our side. Which is, I find that just such a terrible thing to say anyway. I mean, it's just as bad as people on the left who say that this person or that person is not a real Democrat. Like, the moment that you're separating people like that, you're already on the losing end of any discussion or argument. But whatever. Yeah, so let's see. Unless another topic falls in my lap in the next few minutes, I'm gonna say that's probably the end for this one. Let's see. I am working on a ton of reviews this week. Oh, briefly I will mention there was an incident with the DJI drone that I'm reviewing. I was trying to get some final footage, and I did get some final footage. However, the drone malfunctioned. It malfunctioned in a way that I've never seen before. Basically, while landing, it tried to drift. I've never seen a drone drift several feet while landing. When it did this, it tried to land. It initially started trying to land over a rock that I was sitting on. And then when it drifted, it was trying to drift into a river. I managed to cancel the landing, but when it did, for reasons I can't explain, it decided to fly off in another direction and got caught up in some bushes. those bushes happen to be above water. So that drone is currently resting in a bag of rice. The battery, I pulled immediately as soon as I got it out of the water. And funny enough, the drone was still working. It sat in water for 12 seconds. I know this because I have video proof. It sat in water for 12 seconds. It still worked long enough that it was transmitting to the controller where I was doing a screen recording. And yeah, I mean, it was still working. So I'm not really sure what's going to come of this. But yeah, I've already had a few weird issues with this drone. I'm pretty sure it's just because it's a pre-production unit, and so it happens. But yeah, I'm gonna be contacting DJI about it. It's not gonna go into the review because, again, I think this is just a pre-production unit that's had problems. In every other way, I've never seen another drone behave like this, so there's no reason to think this one is unique. But yeah, so that has happened. I'm actually going to try taking it out flying again tomorrow because I need to still get a little more footage. But yeah, so that's a complicated situation. Let's see. There is what else is happening? I think I've mentioned all the other review units that I have. So yeah, I'm going to be just head down working on review stuff for the next week or so. I should be gaming this weekend. I'm also going to try to do a photo edit stream. I was planning to do it tomorrow, but since now I'm probably going to take the drone out flying tomorrow, assuming it is still operational or operational enough. And by the way, it won't be over water next time, which was already my plan. This is not a change of plans. It's just the place I was going to take it is all dry land. So yay. But yeah, so I'm going to, I don't know about the next time I'll be able to do a photo edit stream, but I still intend to do one very soon. So it may or may not be this week. Sorry, David. But it will probably come in the next week or so. I'll try to do a photo edit stream. Maybe I'll start streaming on Mondays or something as a thing. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I need to think on this one. But yeah, I might start doing like Monday streaming, and I'll do that as like photo streams or something. I don't know. It's an idea I'm kicking around. No commitments yet. And even if I do this, before I forget, let's get Ugly Orange off the screen. But yeah, if I do start streaming photo edits, it'd be nice to do that as a regular thing. I don't know how sustainable that is, but I can try. And then once I do that, maybe I'll turn it into photo edits, video edits, and photo shoots. Something like that. Just whatever is appropriate at that given time. But yeah, anyway. So, let's see. Again, should be streaming this weekend. That's should be the normal plan. I will... Let's see. Anything else? I don't think there's anything else. So, with that... Thank you all for coming by, hanging out, being part of the stream, being part of the conversation. If anyone would like to support the channel, there are links down below to Streamlabs, Cash App, and Patreon. And of course, huge thanks to Diablo, Carson, Austin, and David for being Patreon subscribers. You guys are awesome. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's about it. So... I hope you all have an excellent rest of your week. I'm going to be doing photos and hopefully not crashing a drone anymore. There will, of course, be a movie post update coming on Friday, as usual. So yeah, that's about it. So I hope you all the best. And with that, I say good night, everybody.